You know what's funny about almost dying? It doesn't care that you still have deadlines or an unfinished presentation. Monday, 9:47 a.m. I remember it exactly because the digital clock in the conference room was the last thing I saw before my body mutinied right in the middle of our quarterly strategy meeting. One second, I was talking about the budget plan, still clicking through slide 17. The next, my stomach twisted like someone was wringing every inch of my intestines with their bare hands. I got so dizzy it felt like everyone was standing on a spinning ride, and I was the one about to be thrown off. Addison, you okay? Mark from legal called out, sounding more like a guy worried about a late lunch than someone worried I was about to die. I tried to open my mouth, tried to act calm, like I was just allergic to the work hard, live harder slogans hanging around the office. But what came out was a weak hiss, like a balloon leaking air. Then that ugly beige floor we had all complained about for 3 years came rushing up to my face with the enthusiasm of a golden retriever. Blackout. When I woke up, I saw the cold sting of fluorescent lights, the kind that makes everyone look like an extra in a zombie movie. My stomach felt like someone had dropped a suitcase on it, and wires were wrapped around me. Glad you're awake, a nurse said gently. You scared us, Addison. You're lucky to still be here. Lucky? Yeah, that word sounded ridiculous when I was lying there like a medical-themed Christmas tree. Then the doctor walked in. That stern, I'm about to say something your insurance will scream about, look on his face. He studied the chart like it was a classified code and said, You had a miscarriage. About 5 weeks along. Miscarriage. It sounded like someone saying, You dropped a glass. They name things to make them less terrifying, but I knew exactly what it meant. I had just lost my baby. A baby I hadn't told anyone about, not even Wyatt. I had only suspected it last week, that faint double line on the test, and I had planned to tell him tonight. Now there was nothing left to tell. We contacted your emergency contact, the doctor continued. Your husband, Wyatt. He should be here. Wyatt should have been here. My husband of 3 years, the man who held my hand under the altar and said he would love me in sickness and in health. He should have been running in, holding a last-minute bouquet from the gift shop downstairs, breathless, asking if I was okay. But this is a story about should, a word even less reliable than the office water cooler. And the only thing that showed up wasn't Wyatt. It was an Instagram tag announcing that their lives were still wonderful, without me. The first night, not a single soul. No Wyatt bursting through the door with red, swollen eyes. No frantic call asking, Are you okay? Just the steady beeping of the heart monitor, the soft shuffle of nurses' shoes in the hallway, and me, lying there with a stomach that had just become completely empty. I needed something. Yeah, I needed it badly. I needed my husband to care, even just once, that his wife had just lost their baby. I stared at my phone like an addict, begging it to light up. A text, a call, hell, even a carrier pigeon would have done. The screen stayed pitch black. By the second day, still no Wyatt. Not a glimpse, not a sign that he remembered he had a wife. Instead, there was this feeling, like someone had drawn a clean, straight line through my marriage. Not sharp pain, just a slow, burning sting. I started seeing the cracks I had been deliberately ignoring. That silence of his, turns out it wasn't because he was busy. It was because I wasn't in his priority list anymore. Then the anger shifted into something even scarier. Emptiness. Like someone scooped out everything inside me and stuffed it with lifeless cotton. I had no excuse left to defend Wyatt. No more telling myself, maybe he's tired, maybe he's busy, maybe he doesn't know yet. Honestly, doing that was more exhausting than the cramping after the miscarriage, when the person who's supposed to love you unconditionally starts acting like a stranger. By the end of day 2, I stopped checking my phone every few minutes, stopped imagining Wyatt running in, grabbing my hand, saying he was sorry, stopped expecting any shred of kindness from his family. The same family that only remembered me when they needed an urgent loan or needed me to put my name on their insurance. I was clearer-headed, and that clarity stunned me. Apparently, even hope gets tired and leaves. On day 3, while I was lying there counting the ceiling tiles so I wouldn't lose my mind, 247 of them, if you're curious, my phone pinged. For a fraction of a second, my stupid heart jumped, as if it still believed Wyatt had finally remembered I was lying here. Maybe he got into an accident? Maybe his phone broke? Maybe, I don't know, he was trapped under something heavy and had just crawled out alive? The human brain is really good at inventing convenient stories for the people we love, even when the truth has been hitting us in the face for 3 days straight. But no, of course not. It was Instagram. Because in this era, having a family member lying in a hospital bed is never a big enough reason to pause someone's posting schedule. The notification was clear. Felicity tagged you in a photo. Felicity, my sister-in-law, the one who thinks being an influencer is a sacred mission, and that taking aesthetically pleasing matcha smoothie shots is her contribution to civilization. I tapped it open with that sick kind of curiosity. I know this will hurt, but I'm looking anyway. And there it was, glowing under the familiar Valencia filter, a dreamy family picnic by Clearwater Lake. The red and white checkered blanket, the expensive wicker basket, everyone's bright, beaming smiles. A family scene so perfect, it looked like an ad for a perfect family. There was my sister-in-law in front, her blonde hair catching the sunlight exactly the way influencers angle their cameras on purpose, and she was wearing a flowy maxi dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent, while behind her, standing tall like 2 suburban patriarch statues, were my in-laws, Robert and Margaret, with Robert wrapping an arm around his wife, as both of them smiled like they had just won the lottery. Not like they had a daughter-in-law lying alone in a hospital room with a stomach twisted in pain after a miscarriage. And finally, there was Wyatt. Oh, remember him? My husband. Looking carefree and glowing in a way I hadn't seen in months, as if life were all sunshine and cool breezes when I wasn't in the picture. His hand resting comfortably around Ashley's waist, his best friend from college. The whole scene was the exact definition of an aesthetic masterpiece, well, of course, because it was taken at Clearwater Lake, 2 hours outside the city, the same place Wyatt and I once laid out a picnic blanket for our first anniversary. Remember that, sweetheart? Back when we were still pretending to love each other, with the red checkered blanket, the $50 rustic charm wicker basket from some boutique, and gourmet sandwiches that could feed half of Luxembourg. The caption was where Felicity really showed her true colors, a blend of basic girl aesthetics and mild cruelty. Family day without the drama. Sometimes you just need peace and real family. And the kill shot was that they tagged my exact name in this collective monument to sickness, as if to make sure I would see it, would know that while I lay there with an empty stomach, they were living their best life, unbothered by the baby I had just lost. I stared at that digital slap for 5 whole minutes, my brain trying to process what the hell I was looking at. And the timestamp below showed it was posted 2 hours ago, meaning at the exact moment the doctor told me I needed rest and close monitoring after the miscarriage. They were having a picnic. The comment section was exactly what I expected from Felicity's followers. A forest of sparkling heart emojis and lines like OMG goals and cutest family of our, which, sure, would be adorable if your idea of adorable was abandoning a family member in a hospital to take Instagram photos. But then I scrolled a little further, and my blood boiled so hard, I was surprised the heart monitor didn't start screaming. One of Wyatt's cousins, probably Jessica or Jennifer, one of those J names that all sound the same, commented, "Where's Addison?" And Felicity, dainty, sincere, saintly in the fakest way, replied with a crying laughing emoji and the line, "She's taking some time to work on herself." Me, taking time to work on myself. As if I chose to have a miscarriage, as if I said, "Oh hey, you know what would spice things up? Let me nearly die in a conference room." I took screenshots of everything, every caption, every comment, every venomous emoji. And I was already collecting evidence, even though I didn't yet know what crime it would be for. Is there a charge for being fundamentally inhumane? Is there a legal term for smartphone-wielding sociopath? Because if there is, I swear this family would get life in prison. The worst part, and there were many candidates, was that I could picture exactly how it all went down. Wyatt probably got the call from the hospital while getting ready for the lake. Maybe he froze for 30 seconds, debating whether he should visit the wife, who had just lost his baby. Then Felicity called and said something about a boutique, about Instagram shots, about the perfect golden hour light, and his best friend stepped gently closer to him. And just like that, my condition became a minor inconvenience in their picnic plans. And Wyatt, the husband who once promised to hold my hand through every storm, probably nodded lightly, giving himself permission. Yeah, she'll be fine. The pain in my stomach then wasn't just physical. It was the horrifying moment I realized that, to them, I had never been the main character in their story. I was set dressing, a woman with a heartbeat and a bank account, a walking wallet. I set my phone down and looked up at the ceiling, not counting tiles anymore, only thinking about one thing. Sometimes the universe has a brutal but precise way of showing you where you actually stand in someone else's life. And sometimes you have to nearly die to understand that in their world, you were never truly alive. And something in me changed that day. It didn't break, because breaking is loud and dramatic. It just quietly shut off, completely, forever. A few days after being forced to stay at St. Mary, the place reserved for people broken both physically and emotionally, I slipped into what the medical staff would probably call acceptance, though I preferred calling it strategic numbness. You know that feeling when you've been punched in the stomach so many times your body stops reacting? Yeah, that was exactly where I was living, the sedated territory of emotions, where Instagram posts about family picnics and a missing husband couldn't hurt me anymore because I had run out of caring enough to hurt. I became friends with Jorge, the night shift doctor. All he had to do was glance at my empty room before he started sneaking good coffee from the staff lounge for me. We didn't talk much, but sometimes the best therapy is having a stranger look at your life and simply acknowledge, yeah, that's really shitty, without trying to fix it, without trying to explain it. Just acknowledging. That alone made me feel human again. Dr. Ruiz started visiting more often, too, probably because he realized my emergency contact was less reliable than a chocolate teapot. He began asking very gentle questions about my support system at home, which, in normal people language, meant, "Why is no one visiting you?" I'd become skilled at dodging with jokes like, "I'm an extrovert who loves being alone," lines even faker than Felicity's smile in those lake photos. I was half awake, half floating in that strange morphine-made fog, the place where you watch your own life like it's someone else's movie, when my phone absolutely lost its mind. Not one polite buzz, not two helpful alerts, but a violent, angry vibration like a hornet trapped inside a glass jar beating its wings to escape. At first, I thought one of the monitors was malfunctioning. But no, it was my phone, glowing like a Christmas tree in the town square. Except instead of holiday cheer, it was broadcasting a full-blown panic attack from a very familiar area code. 44 missed calls. 44 calls. I counted twice because clearly that number made zero sense. Who calls someone 44 times in a few hours? Answer, my husband Wyatt and his father, Robert. The two men who hadn't been free enough the past 4 days to check whether I was still breathing were suddenly hitting my phone with the urgency of a SWAT team rescuing hostages. The call log looked like a shameful tennis match. Wyatt, Robert, Wyatt, Robert, Wyatt. A frantic back and forth between two people who had just remembered I existed. And of course, all of it arriving more than 4 days late. Then came the message. Not messages, plural, like a normal person who urgently needs to reach someone. No. One message. A single carefully composed note, like a parent-teacher conference invitation. We need you. Answer immediately. That was it. No. Are you okay? No. Sorry we haven't checked on you for days. No. We're worried. Just a command. A tone you'd use to call a dog that wandered too far from the yard. We need you. Answer immediately. And the best part, best, in the most contemptuous way, was that it was sent in a group chat with both Wyatt and Robert, meaning they sat down together, probably at that same picnic, and decided, send this. Maybe after arranging the mason jars and perfecting the Valencia filter, they remembered, our ATM hasn't rebooted yet. I stared at that message for what felt like an hour, though it was probably minutes. The brazenness was almost admirable. 4 days of abandoning me. 4 days of me lying here with stabbing cramps and an emptiness spreading from my chest down to my ribs. And then they dared to scold me with, "We need you," as if the fault was mine for not replying, as if I had ignored them while sedated and ripped apart by grief. The funny thing, funny in the cosmic bitter sense, was that when I read it, my heartbeat didn't spike. No anger flared. I just felt a thin layer of detachment, almost peaceful, as if I were reading someone else's story. Some unfortunate woman watching her marriage disintegrate in sync with the beeping rhythm of her heart monitor. That was when I remembered something I probably hadn't thought about in 5 months. Kyle's mom, my mother, the one person in my life who ever taught me the difference between real love and the kind of affection wrapped in requests, demands, and invoices. She was the one who never asked, "How much can you give me?" Never made me feel like my worth depended on what I could pay, fix, or carry. Looking back, I think she would faint if she knew how long I'd forgotten that lesson. I couldn't remember the last time I called her. Last Christmas? Maybe. Wyatt always had some reason to avoid me visiting her. Too far, too busy, too much going on at home, or the classic, "You'll just get tired again." She lived in a small old house, smelling of old books and lavender, the scent she loved so much that Wyatt would grimace whenever I mentioned her, like my mother was some part of my past he wanted me to bury. But lying there, staring at 44 missed calls and a single clipped message treating me like a broken appliance needing to be rebooted, I found my own fingers scrolling through my contacts until I saw her name. Kyle. Mom. Sitting right between plumber and HR secretary, as if she were just another service, instead of the only person who ever loved me without asking for anything. My hands shook, not from the medication this time. I pressed call. The phone rang once, twice, and then, like a miracle in a world drained dry of miracles, I heard her voice. Hello? That familiar scratchy tone, the kind that comes from living a long life and still being strong enough to stand through all of it. Mom! My voice cracked like a 13-year-old who'd just been bullied and ran home to the one person who would care. It's me! She didn't need me to say anything else. She asked exactly 3 words, calm and steady. Which hospital, honey? She didn't need to know why I'd disappeared so long. Didn't blame me. Didn't ask for explanations. Didn't sigh. Just, where are you so I can come? As if she'd been waiting for this call all along. And within 1 hour, yes, 1 hour, compared to Wyatt's 4 days of silence, she was standing in my hospital room. When she walked in, it felt like the last good piece of my past had stepped through the doorway. Her old brown coat she'd worn through too many winters, her worn-down shoes polished with care, the kind people wear to church or a job interview. Everything about her was the quiet neatness of another generation, the kind of meticulous dignity you rarely see anymore. She looked at me, not at the machines, not at the chart at the foot of my bed, but straight into my eyes, as if checking whether I was still alive, or just a body being kept here by wires. Then she pulled up the hard plastic chair, sat down, and I felt like she could sit there all day if she had to. You look terrible, she said. The most honest words I'd heard in days. No sugarcoating, no attempt to cheer me up, just truth from someone who had seen enough suffering to recognize it instantly. Thanks, Mom, I exhaled. That actually feels nice to hear. She let out a small laugh, the dry crunch of autumn leaves underfoot. If you wanted flattery, you should call your husband. Brutal, but accurate. Then she got to work, classic high-efficiency Kyle style. While I had spent 3 or 4 days pitying myself and counting ceiling tiles, she needed only half an hour to ask the questions the doctor should have heard from Wyatt. How long had I been cramping before the miscarriage? Had I been unusually stressed? Did I have any medication allergies? Did anyone in the family have pregnancy complications? And the truth became painfully clear. Wyatt didn't know a single one of those answers. He didn't know how many days I'd been in pain before the miscarriage. He didn't know my drug allergies, the most important detail while doctors were pumping medication into my body. My mother knew. She remembered everything. Then she stood up, left the room for about an hour, and came back with a stack of papers. Turns out my insurance was playing the delay game. The classic, "Dini first, wait for the patient to give up" maneuver of the healthcare system. They were stalling an important test the doctor had requested. My mother didn't argue, didn't make a scene, didn't threaten legal action. She simply opened her wallet, took out her checkbook, the kind she still balances manually every month, and signed off the full amount without blinking. "Don't say anything. Let them run the test." That was it. Simple, clean, decisive. But that wasn't even the most shocking part. Oh no, the universe had saved the climax just for me. When the nurses left and it was just the two of us, my mother pulled out her iPad. Yes, she's 68 and uses technology better than the fresh college hires I manage, and said 4 words that changed my entire life. "Let me see your finances." I thought I knew where my money was going. Good salary, nice house, decent car, sometimes a little tight, but who isn't, right? But I was wrong. My mother, somehow, without even having the passwords to my accounts, mapped out an entire financial spiderweb connecting me to Wyatt's family. Like performing an autopsy on my bank accounts, except instead of finding a cause of death, she found the cause of 8 years of slow internal bleeding. 5 separate accounts, 5 traps I had either dug myself or conveniently ignored. All of them under my name, all of them steadily pumping money into my husband's family like I was a walking ATM. Wyatt's personal account, which I added myself just in case of emergency, had become his daily Starbucks and Target fund. Felicity's boutique business account, which I co-signed just temporarily 3 years ago. The line of credit for Robert's endless home renovation projects that never actually renovated anything. Even the car insurance under my name covered 3 vehicles: Wyatt's, Felicity's, and Margaret's beat-up Honda. And then there were the recurring Mount Pleasant motel charges every Friday, the exact day Wyatt always said he had to travel for work, paired with nearly $5,000 in Tiffany receipts, and I had never seen a single piece of jewelry show up on my neck. "How did I not know any of this?" I whispered. My mother answered, calm as if she were reading the morning paper, "Because they made sure you wouldn't." Felicity's boutique rent, $2,200 a month, auto-deducted on the 15th for 3 straight years. More than 80 grand I paid, so my sister-in-law could play girl boss on Instagram. The car insurance I thought was $200 a month was actually covering 3 cars because families should help each other. The mortgage, in both our names, had been late twice last year, and both times it was saved by mysterious payments from an account linked to, of course, me. "Mom," I scrolled and scrolled, my hands shaking. "Since when have I been supporting their whole family?" My mother leaned back in the chair and sighed, the sigh of someone who has lived long enough to know when to tell the truth without cushioning it. "We don't love you, baby. They use you." 6 words, just 6 words, and they sliced through 8 years of marriage as cleanly as a scalpel. 8 years of me trying to be a good wife, a provider, the one who never complained when money got tight because I was too busy making sure his whole family stayed comfortable. 8 years believing I was a wife, a sister-in-law, a daughter-in-law. Turns out I was just a wallet with a heartbeat, and that heartbeat had finally learned how to stop for them. It wasn't just financial exploitation. It was betrayal. The hotel bills, the 2 a.m. transfers, the jewelry that never found its way to me, all lined up neatly on the iPad screen like a perfectly curated exhibit of evidence. That night, while the nurses made their rounds and the machines lulled me with their steady beeping, my mother and I started cutting the cords. One account at a time, one auto payment at a time, one chain after another that tied me to that family. For the first time in a very long time, I could breathe. The next hours passed like a military operation planned down to the millimeter. First, the car. The Range Rover was 100% in my name. I bought it 2 years ago when Wyatt's old car died, registered under me because his credit score was a disaster, and ever since he'd promised he would pay me back slowly. I called the finance company directly, sent proof of ownership plus the separation agreement, and authorized repossession. That afternoon, they towed the car away. Next, the bank. I went home, stopping by the branch as soon as it opened. The teller recognized me immediately. I asked to close the joint account. She guided me through each step, professional and calm. I emptied everything, leaving exactly $200 transferred to Wyatt's new individual account so he couldn't scream financial starvation. The remaining $4,000, my salary from the last few months, went straight to my private account. Then the phone carrier. Wyatt's line was part of the family plan I paid for. 10 minutes after the call, his number was cut off. Done. Back home, I called the locksmith. 1 hour later, every lock was changed. After that, I logged into the building's security system and changed all the access codes for the main door and parking garage. Every step documented, every step legal, every step irreversible. That afternoon, I met David again. He had already drafted the divorce petition. Fast, he said, not disapproving. No reason to be slow, I replied. Grounds for divorce? Infidelity, you sure? He asked. It'll get messy. I have evidence. He raised an eyebrow. How much? Enough. I hadn't yet mentioned the package from Sienna, also a friend of my husband, but unlike Ashley, she despised fake sweet girl personas and had warned me before about their communication style. I had brushed it off back then as jealousy between women. Last night, after I told her everything, Sienna sent me evidence. Hundreds of photos with timestamps and locations. Wyatt and Ashley at bars, in the parking lot of the Mount Pleasant Motel, sitting together in her car outside restaurants. Felicity didn't just know. She helped, she smirked. I uploaded them to an encrypted cloud, then forwarded everything to David with a single line. Evidence attached, use as needed. He replied within 5 minutes. More than enough. Filing tomorrow morning. 2 days later, Wyatt's first voicemail arrived, his voice frantic. Addison, my card got declined at the gas station. What the hell did you do to the accounts? Still not a single word about the health of the wife who had just left the hospital. I listened once, saved it as evidence, then blocked his number. Then came the storm of phone calls. Unknown numbers, borrowed phones, Ashley's number, Felicity's number. Wyatt's voice grew increasingly unhinged. You can't cut my money off. This is financial abuse. Felicity went on Instagram crying. Red eyes, trembling voice. Some people only show their true colors during hard times. My brother was trying to be honest, and now he's being punished. She took everything. Comments flooded in with broken hearts. She's so cruel. Stay strong, babe. I didn't respond, didn't watch, didn't need to. Let her perform. And she would eventually repay every dollar she took from me. 10 p.m. I was at the kitchen table, updating my medical paperwork, when the door shook like someone was hitting it with a rifle butt. Addison, open the door right now, Wyatt roared from the hallway. I stood up, looked through the peephole. His face was flushed red, eyes wild. I opened my phone camera and started recording through the peephole. Open the door, this is my house. You changed the locks illegally. The banging grew louder. I walked back toward the living room while calling security. This is 4B. Someone is banging on my door, yelling, refusing to leave. 2 guards arrived quickly. Sir, you need to leave the building. This is my home. Do you have a key? No. Do you have any documents proving residency? She changed the locks illegally. If you don't leave, we will call the police. Silence. Then he growled, "This isn't over." Heavy footsteps, elevator doors, then complete silence. A soft knock from security. "Ms. Hayes, he's gone. We filed an incident report. If he returns, call immediately." I thanked them, closed the door, and sent the video to David. I returned to the table, saved the video into a folder labeled Evidence, and for the first time in a very long time, I felt light. The next morning, I woke without that familiar heaviness pressing on me. The apartment felt light, not because there was less furniture, but because the space finally belonged to me again. I made coffee, stood on the balcony overlooking the parking lot, and saw a few neighbors starting their day. Mrs. Albertson from 3B waved. Mr. Okafor gave me a small, knowing smile. No words, but their eyes said what they didn't. They had witnessed everything. Calls and messages kept coming, from unknown numbers, from numbers I'd already blocked, from people trying to insult me or mediate. I let them sit untouched. David called to say the divorce papers were filed, the service documents prepared, and that the evidence I provided made the case clearer than any noise happening online. "They'll try everything to smear you," he said, "but you're legally solid." I nodded as if responding, though inside I felt only one thing: a fully ripened calm. In the following days, Ashley and Felicity escalated their online campaign. Videos, stories, live streams full of tears and accusations. But the reaction wasn't the same anymore. Some followers began questioning. A few people in the building started sharing what they'd seen. Wyatt coming home late, smelling of alcohol, Ashley showing up at my place for dinner far too often that month. These tiny accounts wove together into another net, one that revealed the full picture. Not me as the homewrecker, but them as the adulterers, the betrayers. In the building, life settled back into order, but it wasn't the same order. More people greeted me. They nodded as they passed in the hallway, offering small smiles like threads of comfort. Wyatt, meanwhile, grew lonelier. His public calls, his pleading voicemails, and eventually, the quiet fallout of friends who once treated him warmly turning cold. No more support, some turning away, some avoiding him entirely. A man who cheated on his wife while she was in the hospital. A husband whose family treated his wife like an ATM that walked and breathed. The day David called to say he's been served, I remember the feeling that washed over me. Relief, not because victory had arrived, the court date was still ahead, but because everything was now moving through a legal pathway. I wasn't a wife alone in a hospital with no visitors anymore. I was someone with evidence, someone who had brought everything into the light, someone walking through a structured, legitimate process. The next steps unfolded exactly as David and I planned. The divorce petition with infidelity cited, the request for asset division based on premarital property, and a motion to protect my financial interests. The legal office worked efficiently, forms were filed, parties notified. I learned that cruelty could be answered through law, through dry but fair procedures, through signatures and stamps. The following weeks weren't without difficulty. There were some legal calls from Wyatt's side, a few threatening messages, and a couple of mornings when I woke with my heart racing from residual fear. But most moments were different. I planned for the future, booked a meeting with a tax advisor, began cleaning my office the way I wanted it, reorganized my closet, and rediscovered books buried under contracts and bills. Every small action was a brick in rebuilding my life. And most importantly, I slept better. Not the exhausted sleep that comes from running away, but the peaceful sleep of someone who no longer has to hold up a family built on her own money. I knew the road ahead was long, that the court still had work to do, that trust takes time to heal. But what lay before me was no longer a pit. It was a path, and this time I walked it without the fear of falling. Then, a few days later, a friend sent me a link. "Have you seen this? You might want to." I was on the balcony with my morning coffee. I clicked. Wyatt's Facebook. Video, my truth. I almost closed it, but fine. A few seconds. Wyatt sat on Ashley's floral couch, beige walls, cheap art, the perfect backdrop for a self-appointed victim speech. Red eyes, trembling voice like he was about to cry. I just wanted a peaceful family weekend. I'm going through a hard time. She's punishing me because I turned off my phone. He said I was controlling, financially abusive, cold. He turned himself into the victim, turned me into the villain. Comments poured in. You're so brave. Some people are truly cruel. You deserve better. I watched 30 more seconds, then closed it. Let him perform. Attention is the drug he's been addicted to for years, and I don't sell that anymore. I went back to my coffee, deleted the message, and opened my half-finished book. On the day of the hearing, that morning, I chose my clothes carefully. Black slacks, a white button-down, minimal jewelry, professional, clean. I tied my hair back the way I used to before long shifts, then drove to the county family court downtown. David was waiting by the entrance, in a gray suit and carrying his worn leather briefcase, looking exactly like the kind of lawyer people hope for when their life is falling apart. "Ready?" he asked. "Ready." We walked in. The smell of old wood mixed with industrial cleaner, footsteps echoing across the tile floor. We took the elevator, rode up to the third floor, then walked down a hallway lined with long wooden benches, the kind that had witnessed thousands of endings. At the door of 3C, I inhaled deeply. The courtroom was smaller than I imagined. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a cold, flat tone across the room. The wooden benches, polished smooth by countless desperate hands, looked heavy and solemn, carrying the sense that there was no turning back. Wyatt was already seated at the left table. His lawyer, a young man barely 30, his suit slightly too big, sat beside him. Wyatt looked thinner than the last time I saw him. His shirt was wrinkled, his eyes sunken. He didn't look up when I entered. Ashley sat behind him, arms crossed, gaze sharp like a blade. She was dressed neatly, as if auditioning for the role of devoted protector of the family in some cheap play. David and I sat at the right table. He arranged his documents, opened his notebook, and waited. At exactly 9:05, the clerk called out, "All rise." We stood. The judge entered, a woman in her late 60s, gray eyes sharp as steel, hair pulled back, her presence instantly silencing the room. She reminded me of the veteran nurses who once trained me, direct, grounded, without unnecessary words. "Sit," she said, then reviewed the file in front of her. Judge Harmon flipped through each page. Her finger traced the lines, occasionally marking notes in the margins. Then she moved to the evidence packet my lawyer had submitted. The affair photos, coordinates, timestamps. Next, the security report from the night Wyatt pounded on my door, along with the message logs showing how he abandoned me while I was hospitalized after the miscarriage. The room was so quiet I could hear Wyatt breathing too fast. Felicity was hunched over her phone in her lap, probably wanting to record, but too scared to do it in a courtroom. Finally, Judge Harmon looked up. She removed her glasses and set them down, a gesture that made the entire room pull tight like a string. "Mr. Brennan," she said, her voice clear, each word landing like a verdict. "Stand." Wyatt stood, his attorney rising with him. "I have reviewed all evidence." Her tone was steady, unwavering. "And let me state plainly what I see here. This is a textbook case of infidelity, supported by extensive documented proof." Wyatt swallowed hard. His lips twitched, but his lawyer touched his arm, signaling him to stay silent. "You signed the prenuptial agreement on—" She checked the page. "Completely voluntarily, without coercion, with witnesses present. You then violated that agreement through adulterous conduct, captured in photographs, messages, and third-party confirmation." Wyatt opened his mouth, but the judge lifted her hand, not even looking at him. "You also abandoned your wife while she was hospitalized after a miscarriage, an act the court views as a serious failure of marital duty. and you approached her residence, caused a disturbance, and required security intervention. All of this is documented." She paused, letting each word settle in the air. "Based on this, the court grants Ms. Hayes's petition for divorce. Furthermore, Mr. Brennan is ordered to reimburse expenditures, such as hotel stays and gifts for his mistress, that were paid from Ms. Hayes's accounts. He forfeits any claim to marital assets." She tilted her head toward Wyatt. "Do you understand?" Wyatt went pale. "I understand, Your Honor." "Good. That concludes this matter." Judge Harmon brought down the gavel, a single sharp crack that echoed through the room like a door slamming shut, one I had waited my whole life to hear. She stood, gathered her files, and exited through the side door. For a long second, no one moved. Ashley stared at me wide-eyed, while Wyatt collapsed into his chair, staring at nothing as though someone had emptied the air from his lungs. David turned to me. "It's done. You're officially divorced. Every request granted." I nodded. Not joy, not pain, just clarity. A clean, definitive peace, like a heavy book finally closing on the exact page it needed to. I walked past Wyatt without slowing, without meeting his eyes, without a single word. No need. The court had spoken for me. Felicity caught up to me in the hallway outside the courtroom. "Are you happy now?" she hissed through her teeth. "You destroyed him." I stopped, turned, and looked straight at her. "I didn't destroy anyone, Felicity. Wyatt did that himself. I just stopped funding him and your family." She opened her mouth to fire back, but I had already turned away, walking toward the elevator with David. We stayed silent the entire ride down. Outside, the morning sun was bright and warm. Late spring Charleston. The trees so vividly green, they felt like a reminder that some things keep living even when you've just closed an entire chapter of your life. I was unlocking my car when I heard footsteps behind me. "Addison!" I turned. Wyatt stood there, looking smaller, deflated, like a wrinkled version of the man who'd lived beside me all those years of marriage. "You think you won?" His voice shook, not with anger, but with despair barely hidden under shredded pride. "This isn't over. You'll regret it." I looked at him, truly looked, for the first time in weeks, and felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no longing. Just the detached observation of someone staring at a stranger behind ICU glass. "It ended the day you abandoned me in the hospital, Wyatt," I said softly. "You're just the last one to figure it out." He opened his mouth, then closed it again, as if no words in the world could make it out. I got into my car, started the engine, and drove away. In the rearview mirror, he stood there with his hands shoved into his pockets, watching me. He grew smaller and smaller, until he disappeared behind the curve of the road. I went home, changed clothes, cooked a simple lunch. Then I called my mother. "It's done," I said when she answered. "Official." "Official?" "Yeah." "How do you feel?" I thought for a moment. "Free." My mother was silent for a few seconds. "Good. You deserve that." In the weeks that followed, bits of news about Wyatt trickled back to me through acquaintances. Sarah, a coworker who knew someone at Wyatt's job, pulled me aside. "I heard. Wyatt's not doing well lately." "I'm not keeping track," I said. "He's living with Ashley now in that townhouse. Neighbors keep complaining about shouting. Police came twice last week." "I see." Sarah studied me. "You really don't care anymore, do you?" "No," I said. "That's enough." Someone else mentioned Ashley posting a long rant before deleting it within an hour. Another said she kicked Wyatt out, then took him back after he begged. I listened the way I listened to patients' families sharing stories, with empathy but without attachment. Their choices, their consequences. I made mine, and I was living in the quiet peace of that choice. 2 months after the divorce ruling, my mother and I went to look at apartments. I had already sold the old one. We found a place in West Ashley, High ceilings, sunlight flooding the rooms, wooden floors that didn't creak, and a small balcony overlooking a park, a place that felt like a real beginning. During the marriage, I had let many relationships fade. Wyatt didn't like me going out, didn't like me needing anyone but him, so I slowly shrank my world to fit inside his. After the divorce, I started texting friends again, slowly, cautiously. Rachel was the first. We'd been close during nursing school, then life pulled us in different directions. When I asked if she wanted to grab coffee over the weekend, her reply came instantly. We met at a cafe near the hospital. When I walked in, she stood up and hugged me tightly. "I missed you," she said. "I missed you too." We talked for 3 straight hours about work, life, and all the things left unsaid while I was drowning in the wrong marriage. We made plans to meet every 2 weeks. I joined a book club at the library. I went to co-workers' birthdays. I stayed out until midnight, laughing and dancing like someone who'd finally rediscovered her real heartbeat. I slowly remembered who I used to be, the woman I had forced myself to shrink just to fit into Wyatt's fragile shadow. And it turned out she was still there. She just needed space to breathe. One Saturday morning, I woke up naturally. No jolt, no anxiety, no pressure from anyone. Sunlight filtered through the curtains, warm and soft. I lay still for a few minutes, feeling my own breath, listening to children laughing in the park, a dog barking in the distance, music drifting lightly through the air. I made coffee, stepped onto the balcony, sat in my pajamas with messy hair, no makeup, no rush. I opened the book I'd abandoned long ago, and simply lived.